Welcome to BRR Media. Today I'm joined by Adrian at Wildfire, the Director of Scientific and Business Strategy. Adrian, it's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Rosie, and thank you for inviting me on.
Now, Adrian, you've launched the STRiVE project. Please, can you tell us more?
Well, this is a survey we've got going for seasonal transmissible respiratory viruses. And what we're looking for is in our own staff. We're going through them, and family and friends can also sign on through our informed consent forms to provide swabs when they are feeling ill from an upper respiratory tract infection. And then we analyze those swabs to see what's in them. So what we want to do is collect a portfolio of different viruses, which we can then grow up as they're needed to make new challenge agents. And new challenge agents are very important to our business.
So tell us more. Why is the important, what is the importance of finding a new viral challenge agent, and how does the discovery of new viral agents benefit scientific research?
Well, you'd think it'd be surprisingly easy to get hold of viruses for viral challenge agents, but it's not, because most of those have already been isolated. They've been grown up in different ways, and that spoils some of the characteristics. So we want the raw virus. We want the very early samples. So getting those is incredibly difficult because people don't keep those. They just do their tests, throw them away, or they grow the virus on and keep the virus. So it's really important to us we get these fresh samples, these new samples with newly circulating viruses. If you're making a vaccine, for example, and we can use SARS-CoV-2, COVID is this as a good example in this. We've seen how the vaccine efficacy has changed as it's gone from this early alpha variant right through to Omicron. And we've seen changes in the spike protein that have meant those vaccines have become less effective, which means you have to boost a lot more. So instead of having a very strong antibody, you just have lots more of them that might be slightly weaker. You get the same effect, but it means you have to keep boosting people. If we can use the latest variant, like an Omicron, equivalent in influenza, then we can make sure that the vaccines coming out absolutely target current circulating strains. The older the viruses are we test, the less relevance they have coming forward into the vaccines we're trying to develop. It doesn't work quite so well when you're trying to do drug testing. That paradigm fails because viruses don't change some of their basic pathways characteristics too much, or they die. You can't change the way you breathe. It actually, it will affect the way you live your life. And viruses are the same. They can't change some of their basic internal aspects, their pathways that rule their lives. But what's stuck on the outside of them, they can change quite a lot without necessarily affecting that. So we want these new viruses. We want to collect them, fresh viruses from people in the community. Our members of staff are people in the community like anyone else, and they've been a great source of viruses for us. And this project's been remarkably successful with 180 viruses from several different strains, many different families of viruses. And that's what we want to keep doing going forward, is keep collecting these viruses. So as we need new ones, we can grow them. And
how can hVIVO grow a viral challenge agent?
Well, I mean, that's the $24 million question, and I'm working with another group on that. And I previously had a company involved in that. Keeping that virulence, keeping that wild type characteristic is not as easy as it first might sound. Some people have failed to keep the faithfulness to those original viruses, and it makes them probably not as good a challenge agent. We're specialized in making sure those viruses really look like they did when they came out of the original patient or subject. And that's by growing them on the right cell lines, knowing how many times to run them through, to passages that we call it, how many rounds of replication we can allow, some of the conditions in growing them, and also understanding the virus itself, understanding how it attaches to those cell lines, how it emerges in those cell lines, and how to test them to make sure that they're safe before we put them into people. And that's, you might think it's quite simple. People make vaccines from attenuated viruses all the time, but an attenuated virus doesn't make a very good challenge agent because you don't have any symptoms. And we've seen with SARS-CoV-2, those vaccines are mainly about stopping people getting severe symptoms, going to hospital, having these morbid events, and to do that, to show your vaccine's effective, you need to have those sort of symptoms. So we need to make viruses that give people just the right amount of illness that we can measure that, but obviously not make them so ill that we worry.
As stated in your recent announcement, the virus samples are from hVIVO staff. How did the employees react to this project? Have you had much uptake?
They've been amazing, and we've done a few new models recently, and now we're doing, this project where we're actually swabbing people, and they've rallied round. As I say, we've had 180 different viruses. I think that's incredible that we've done that from a staff base, which is, in its hundreds in itself. They've really supported this. They've been very keen to understand what they've been infected with. Most people have an infection, you've no idea what you've had. I myself, I think I had an adeno the other day, just because I know something about the subject, but I can't be sure. But by going into the program, I know what I've had. And so it's not just helping the company, but it's also helping their understanding of their own health. So it's been a double success, in as much as we have a great set of viruses, and we've got better understanding of what those mean within our own staff and to the staff themselves.
So what samples are you now looking for, and how can people help you?
Well, you may have noticed this year that influenza has been sort of remarkable by its absence. And it's been one of those years where we've seen it in hotspots around the world, but generally it's been very low and below what we call an epidemic level, let alone a pandemic level like in 2009. We'd like some more influenza viruses to reflect what's currently going around or what's likely to come around. And we think there are some out there. We have some idea of what's coming. And fantastic groups like the HSA are working on that, NIBS and other groups throughout the world, where we get samples from the Southern Hemisphere. But the trouble with getting those samples from either historic sources or from big agencies is they've usually tested them already. As I said before, I want the virus from a sample. I don't want it from a bank so much, because where it's been biobanked, it's already been passaged, it's been grown on other cell lines, and I can't control its history. Very important when you're growing these viruses, its history. So I want a fresh influenza virus. There's not a lot around in Europe right now. If you look at you look at our own STRiVE program, we've not seen much influenza. And if you look through all the reporting, like FluNet, all these reporting networks around Europe and the UK, again, we're just not seeing very much at all. It's flat on the floor. So we're desperate to get hold of some influenza. Would really like to get hold of some fresh samples. And the only reason we're desperate is because we're just not seeing it. And everyone's the same around the world. Everyone's looking for these, where's influenza gone? Where's this hiding? It's got to be out there. We've lost a whole strain. The Yamagata strain just seems to have disappeared off the face of the earth. So something funny is going on. We want to find out what's going on. We want to take some of those strains and we want to use them in our challenge study as challenge agents to try and understand some of what's going on, not just in the community, but also globally with influenza right now.
Well, Adrian, really interesting. Thank you very much for talking to us today, and hopefully catch up with you again soon.
Thank you very much, Rosie.